Hi. After being house arrest for almost a month and a half, I actually ventured out yesterday. I ventured out twice before, uh, but then I did not go to the petrol pump. Yesterday I went there to get petrol filled in my vehicle, and I found that the rates were very high. The cost of the petrol has crossed 100 rupees per liter. Now, there's a lot of news about petrol prices uh, today, that it has hit the all-time high. So I've written down certain points, and I found certain other things that are related to import and export, and how certain misconceptions were there which are now removed. So here it goes. These are just simple points. If you stay with me, you'll know what I'm trying to say. Now, this is nothing new. I just said that petrol prices were all-time high. I don't know about today. I'm talking about yesterday, and it was news today. Now, India is the third largest consumer of petrol in the world, and therefore 80% of the oil that Iraq produces is bought by India, and 60% of what Saudi Arabia produces, again, we are the importers of it. So this is all on Google. I've just consolidated the information so that if you had misconception that we are doing really bad on trade front, here are things that may make you think otherwise, and that may make you wonder why are prices still rising. All right, so India is the third largest consumer. So far, there is no discrepancy. We are in what the government says and what we believe. Now, what's an interesting point is that the demand for petrol was all-time high, and therefore the import was all-time high in December 2020. Now, you all know as well as I do that the demand for the fuel had doused so much, but we were all filled with wonderment why the price of petrol price isn't coming down, when the producers of petrol, they were talking about how much losses they were facing because of the demand that had fallen down. And if it is all about demand and supply, which would decide the price of a particular item, of a particular product, why the prices hadn't gone down. There's one little fact, that the prices had gone down in 2014-15, but those did not reflect in the price of petrol in the country, because that particular amount that the government was taking, the, the Ministry of Commerce, it's all there. Okay, uh, they try to fill the gap of the trade deficit that India was facing. They try to keep consequently, they try to keep the fiscal deficit down. So there's a lot of lack of transparency. Not that if you get money from one place, you try and fill the gap, try and make things okay on the other front. But then these things are not they're not so much out there. You have to search very hard, you have to make deductions, you have to read between the lines. All right, so this was it, that it's a record high these days, the petrol prices. Then India is indeed one of the largest consumers. It's the largest importer of crude oil, third largest. The first one is China, then US, then we. That's that. But we are nowhere close to their GDP. Now, in all era, there are certain trade items that are most sought after. Like in old times, there were food items. Then we were made to believe by, and for a brief period it did happen, that the terms of trade for the food items had gone down. But now you would find all big countries, they are the biggest food exporters, both processed and unprocessed, because of the subsidy or whatever be the reason. But then it completely almost finished the market for this smaller, less developed countries. Okay, so the items that did very well, in the trade scene were oil, fuel, that is, pharmaceuticals, food, then you have your electrical equipments, automobiles, auto components, auto parts, electronic items, jewelry. And here are the things that India does very well in. India excels in export of jewelry. It still tops the charts. It tops the charts in spices. It still does very well in spices overall. Of course, there are many competitors, but it still does very well. It ranks in all these streams. It ranks in the first three, and it also does very well in the export of diamond. This is uncut diamond. And in jewelry, it imports gold from other countries, turns them into the making, as they say. It turns it into jewelry and sells it and excels in it, and it does well in pharmaceuticals. It has 10th rank in exports of medicines. All right. Other than that, natural gas. Now, this is something we've always heard that India lacks. It indeed lacks, as in it has only 52% of the total consumption level. So it imports quite a bit. However, it also exports. It's given in the book released by Ministry of Commerce. It just doesn't come into the public domain as much. India exports natural gas, 7.6 million cubic meters. India is one of the biggest exporters of refined oil. It is the third largest exporter of refined oil. That is refined as in petrol. The petrol that you extract from the crude oil. It is 40%. It is on the third position and has 40% of the market, total world market. These number crunching gets a little confusing for me. However, we top the charts. We are in the first three. Okay. We also export crude oil, but lesser, because we ourselves don't have too much of crude oil reserves, but we still export sizable amount. Now, this was a surprise factor for me, because ever since I remember, I've always heard government talking negatively about how bad is the trade deficit, and how we are buying petrol and crude oil, and it's slurping away all our revenues from the trade. So here is a point that we may keep in mind, that how do you export things that you yourself lack. So keep that in mind. Now, another point. India is the third largest importer of oil, 9.7%. The first largest importer is China. It imports 22.6%. US second to 12.5%, but we are on the third position, 9.7%. Keep that in mind, because something equally interesting is coming out. Yep. All right. We are largest consumer. Out of the total import, global import or export, let's just say export of oil, we import 9.7% of it. How much do we consume? We consume 4.6%. We consume 4.6% out of the total oil consumption, total petrol consumption. Okay. US is the highest consumer. It consumes 20.3% of the total oil that's there. Then you have China. China consumes 13.2%. That's, do you see the difference? We import 9.7% of the total oil that's sold. We consume 4.6%. All right. An average Indian spends about 18 to 20% of his income on fuel. So if this percent was less, let's say 11% or 12% or 10%, he would obviously have, an average Indian would have uh, more money to save, more to spend on other things that will make the market more vibrant. Okay. So what is the idea you get? What are the deductions, conclusions you've drawn so far? Does the trade, uh, international trade that India engages in, does it look dismal? Not to me. There are sources that say that out of the total shipments of exports and of trade, 60% of it are of India. They belong to Indian. They are from India. So that just talks about things not too bad on the trade front. And therefore, this year we don't have trade deficit. We have trade surplus of 2%. So all those talks about how badly we are doing and how bad how much the petrol is sucking away from the revenue, it's not making sense. Trade is good, trade is healthy. Of course there are certain streams like automobile, we are not doing good in that, but auto components, auto parts, we're okay, we're doing good. So we're doing in exporting electrical equipments, not electronic equipments, we still need to up our game, but electrical equipment, spices, jewelry, pharmaceuticals, oil, refined oil. So all right, so things are good, and that's why we are having a surplus of trade. There's another thing that people all right, let me not just get swayed. This time the budget deficit was 9.8%. Now this time when I say I talk about 2021, okay, this is quite a high figure. This is quite high. 9.8% of GDP was the deficit, that is revenue fell short by this much percent, or the expenditure exceeded by this much percent of the GDP, total GDP of the country. So what exactly is going wrong? Trade is doing good, and the government in all these years, past years, I'm not even talking about the parties, the different political parties, they have all been the same. So we've heard government talk about the loans it has to repay, which is again taking away all most part of its revenue. So there was even a statement that out of 1 rupee that is earned, 18 paisa goes into repayment of loans that the past government had taken. But there was a news on 8th of January this year when RBI declared that central government no more owes any debt. How did they get so many billions of rupees in to repay that loan would be interesting to find out. Alright, so trade surplus, no loan, petrol prices breaking the back of the middle income group, because the lower income group is not much affected. They are in a bad shape all the way. All right, so this is this. Yeah. Now the top exporters. I spoke about how refined oil is exported. Now, does it sit well with you That's something which is so important, which is dousing, extinguishing the economic vibrancy in the country. That's exported out. Do you think that is a good is good? Do you think it is palpable? I know the answer. Now, why do companies, petrol companies, private companies sell the refined oil? They sell it because they say that they don't have a level playing field for selling petrol in India, because the preconditions are that you have to open at least 100 petrol pumps to begin with. 5% have to be in the rural region. Now 5% have to be in rural region is not something that they mind, but opening 100 petrol pumps in one go, not just in metros or in the initial stage, nothing. Open 100 petrol pumps. Okay, this is what they are asked of. Plus, on your petrol pump, also sell an alternate energy fuel, electric or biofuel or anything, LPG, other fuels. Now, do the state-owned petrol companies do the same? No, they don't. They aim to do the same. They have a target to meet of starting an alternate energy fuel outlet on their petrol pumps, but they haven't started it as yet. But the private companies are asked of it. So what they do, they sell their refined product outside the country. Even until now, things are making sense. But do you know what are the top 4 exporters of petrol in the country? Only one is a private company, that's Reliance. Rest are all state-owned companies like IOC, which anyways has around 25,000 petrol pumps in the country. They own 32% of the market. Then you have your ONGC, the producer of oil and natural gas. It owns 6% of the market, and it is one of the exporters, top 10 exporters of petrol. Top 10 exporters and among the top 10 exporters in the country, and top 3 exporters of oil. Then you have your Bharat Petroleum. Yeah. Have I written BPCL? Yeah. So this is it. It has 15% market, and it has 15,000 petrol pumps outlets. So if you see, even the state-owned companies sell petrol outside. Now I want to wind up things. What's the cardinal rule? No, let's not even talk about the moral aspect of selling those things outside that you yourself fall short of. In fact, there would be less of shortage if things are not sold. If petrol is not sold outside, you are making money at the cost of home economy. So where is the rule? So since I have always, or not always, for last few days taking cues from nature, so there is something that I would like to share. You may find it a little too, I don't know, incredulous. I always use the word. Yeah, you may find it a little off track, but I find it very enlightening. So what is petrol? Petrol is a raw material. What else is a raw material? Anything which is a raw material, like your metals, chemicals, anything that is a raw material, don't sell it until until the demand for those material are met in your own country. Why do I say that? So let me bring in that bit that I was talking about. There are actually five natural agents. You have your fire, earth, air, water, ether, or call it plasma. We'll not talk about it. But what does fire represent to you? Passion, ambition. Just think about the heat energy. Think about the speed with which the particles move. So they move the fastest in fire. It doesn't move at all in earth, and then it doesn't move. It moves quite fast in air, slightly less fast in water, still quite fast. We're not even talking about plasma now. So this represents, fire represents fuel, fire, fuel, earth, metals, air, it is a transformative energy. It also integrates. So wherever it flows, it will take a bit of it. It flows over sea, ocean, it'll get saturated with water vapor. It flows in the dry region, it'll become dry. So it's very integrative. It breaks rocks. It shapes sand dunes. So if fire reminds me of fuel, earth reminds me of metals and natural minerals, air reminds me of technology. Air for me represents technology because it knows how to have its way around things. Water, liquidity, that's credit, that's finance. So all these are raw material to make something. Just like we are made, each and every living being is made of these few basic elements. Every raw material in the country represents the building block of your economy. Don't sell it outside until your own needs are met. That's my point. Alright, why do I say that? Why it is also not a wise thing to do from economic point of view. It is not a wise thing to do because any day world markets are going to be volatile. There can be greater volatility in the world market. The administrative cost is higher. The operation cost could be higher there. There is a lot of competition. So at some point in time when there's crisis outside, you always have a well-developed economy. Well-developed economy translates into more revenues, right? So you have a well-developed economy that can give you good revenues, where you have less competitors waiting for you. So that's definitely not a very wise move on part of companies. Talking of the government, I find it hopeless these days to talk about the government. So much lack of transparency, so much information deficit. So if nothing happens, if things go on as they are, what will eventually happen? It is a very time-taking process, but it will happen. That people are going to find substitute to petrol. That's what happens when one of your resources is taken away. Something else develops, but that's a very time that I said it's going to take a lot of time. So coming back to the point, the petrol prices being high, nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. It should not be, and these are the reasons why it should not be so. Alright, the video, like always, has gotten so long, but I guess it was important to communicate this information. Alright, bye.